rocas de Chile derramadas.
This is Pablo Neruda, the most fecund, joyous voice of Latin America, the richest user of the Spanish language, perhaps our greatest living poet. My name remains Pablo. I am just as I was, with my doubts, with my debts, my loves, with the whole sea to myself. I have pushed past the deltas from country to country, the unbearable wastes of the world, and always came back. What could I ever say without my roots? Neruda has been translated into nearly every language on earth. At the University of Santiago, he assembles a new exhibition of his books. He is celebrated by poets and scholars, and revered by the people, for even his most complex poems speak directly to them. His compassion rings in his famous poem about Abraham Lincoln, Rail Splitter, Awake.
Que nada de esto pase, que despierte el leñador, que venga Abraham con su hacha y con su plato de madera.
Rail Splitter, awake. Let Abraham come with his hatchet to eat from his own wooden plate with a farmhand. May the bark and the rind of his head, his eyes like the knotholes in wood or the oak's corrugations, look out once again on a world rising over the foliage, towering over the sequoias. Let him enter the drugstores and buy, catch the bus into Tampa, bite yellow apples, take in a movie, have his say with the everyday folk of the world. Rail Splitter, awake.
¿Ustedes saben quién soy yo? Ustedes me conocen a mí. Yo soy el poeta Neruda, Pablo Neruda.
Do you know who I am? Neruda asks the schoolboys at the Santiago Zoo. He does not really need to ask. His face and his words are familiar throughout Chile. All that lives feeds Neruda's curiosity. He has written poems about each animal in the zoo. Monkey, seal, and puma remind him of real-life equivalents. He has written an ode to the elephant.
Espesa bestia pura, san elefante, animal santo del bosque sempiterno.
Gross innocent, Saint Elephant, blessed beast of the perduring forests, bulk of our palpable world in its counterpoise, mighty and exquisite. A saddler is cosmos in leather, ivory packed into satins, unmoved like the flesh of the moon. Minimal eyes to observe without being observed. Horn virtuoso and bugling propinquity. Animal water spout, elate in its cleanliness. Portable engine and telephone booth in a forest. So softly you go in your swagger, with your aging caparison in the wrinkle and pile of his regimental. Your pants at your ankle, trailing your tail end. Make no mistake, that endeared and enormous sojourner of jungles is nobody's clown. He is patriarch, father of emerald lights, the ancient and innocent sire of the universe. When Neruda leaves the zoo in Santiago, there is always the flea market. For Neruda, it is not enough to look and to listen. He must touch, he must feel. He must move his fingers over all the holy objects of everyday existence. Besides, the prices are good, and he does his shopping here. Only Neruda could write an ode to things.
Amo las cosas locamente. Me gustan las penazas.
I love mad things madly. I take pleasure in scissors and tongs. I adore teacups, soup plates, and hoops. To say nothing at all of, say, hats. I love each single thing. Not only the elegant ones, but the infinitesimally small. The thimble, the spur, the platter, the flower bowl. Such a pretty planet, my darling. Full of pipes for the fingers trailing off into smoke. Full of keys and salt cellars. In short, all things men have made with their hands. Everything. The curves in a shoe. All fabrics, oars, newly born without blood. Eyeglasses, nails, brooms, watches and compasses, coins, and the smoothness that smoothens a chair. How pure are the things men have made out of wool, out of wood, out of crystal and rope. Marvels of tables, ladders, and ships. I love all things. Not because they blaze out or are fragrant, but because, heaven knows why, this ocean is yours as well as my own. These buttons or buds, these wheels, little treasures forgotten by all, the fans in whose feathers love dissolves into orange blossoms, the cups, knives, and scissors, all hold in their handles, their contours, the print of our hands. A hand now remote to us, lost in our total oblivion. The collected works of Pablo Neruda fill more than 2,000 pages. They include poems both traditional and innovative. All the poems reveal a passionate involvement with the joys and the sorrows of real people in a real world. All reveal a poet of flesh and bone, a man strengthened by his kinship with men in the marketplace. Neruda explains, each day I learn something. Combing my hair every day, I think what you think, walk as you walk, and eat as you do. I circle my love with my arms as you circle yours. And then, when all's known and each is made equal, I write. I write with your life and my own. When winter ebbs in Chile, Senor and Senora Neruda leave Santiago for their dream house. The house overlooks the Pacific coast at Isla Negra, Black Island. The house is sometimes mistaken for a ship upon the rocks. Neruda is the master of this vessel. His flag, the sign of the fish, flies at the yardarm to indicate the captain is aboard. The fish is Neruda's faithful symbol. It appears on the frontispiece of his many books. This house reflects Neruda the mariner home from the sea, and Neruda the collector of artifacts acquired in travels throughout the globe. Neruda may have discovered pop art long before the term was coined, but his house is above all a refuge for work. Neruda writes to the accompaniment of waves crashing on the beach beneath his study. is surrounded by portraits of his literary idols. Neruda is a blood brother to two earlier American poets, Edgar Allan Poe and Walt Whitman. Like Whitman's Leaves of Grass, Neruda's Canto General is a work that links poet and country in a vision of man's greatness. In his ode to Walt Whitman, Neruda says, "I do not recall at what age or where, whether in the great wet South or on the fearful coast under the brief scream of the seagulls, I touched a hand, and it was the hand of Walt Whitman. I trod the earth with bare feet. I walked on the grass on the constant dew of Walt Whitman. Your spade brought up into the light not only earth, you unburied man." Neruda was born Neftali Ricardo Reyes in July 1904. The steam engine on his lawn recalls his youth in the south of Chile, where his father worked as a railway crew foreman. Railroading remains in the poet's blood. Neruda remembers his boyhood in the Ode to the Old Mapocho station house.
Antiguo hangar echado junto al río, puerta del mar, vieja estación rosada.
An old hangar dumped by the river, a seaport, the seedy pink station house under whose rusty concavities dreams and trains once took off with throttles wide open, rattling away to the waves and the city. Smoke, dreams, and the runaway man, grief, motion, and smoke, winters and joys have corroded your walls, eaten into your arches until only a poor dying cathedral is left. Old station house, more than the waves of Mapocho flows out toward the sea. Time flows with you too. Once on a bannerless people, you gleamed spick and span as a newly built cage. The Mapocho rasped at your walls with its ribbon of ooze, and children dozed off on the wings of their hunger. Yours was a heyday more wretched and genteel than our own. Your great ship of iron fattened top hats and crinolines, while the lives of the destitute encircled you sordidly, a river of bitterness. Pablo Neruda is a pen name adopted by the young poet to spare his family any embarrassment over his early verses. The prizes won by those verses spurred his departure for higher education in Santiago. Neruda came to the capital city at 16. In 1924, he became famous for his volume, 20 Love Poems and a Desperate Song. Over 1 million copies of this book have been sold to date. Neruda was rewarded with an appointment to the Chilean consular service. During the next decade, world events sped his growth from an introspective poet into a socially conscious one. Neruda has since wandered far in the service of his country, as poet, diplomat, politician, and exile. He is, without doubt, the most widely read poet now writing in any language. But the rocky, forbidding coast of Chile remains the anchor of his hopes. He has lived at Isla Negra since 1953. Each year, he puts more of himself into this house. Neruda's poetry always moves from the specific to the general. Now he builds a new study with similar attention to details of craftsmanship. The rocky hillside of Isla Negra does not encourage flowers, but Matilda Neruda, herself a daughter of the soil, has found a way to cultivate beauty among the crevices. His wife is the center of Neruda's universe. For her, he has written a special tribute. It is only one of the numerous love sonnets the poet has addressed to her.
Vienes de la pobreza de las casas del sur.
You come from the destitute south, from the house of privation, from regions made hard with the earthquake and cold, that gave us hard lessons in living in the chalk and the clay, while the gods whom they worshipped were spinning away to their death. You are a little mare carved in black clay, a kiss dusky with pitch beloved, a clay poppy, a pigeon of twilight that fluttered its way on the roads and followed us into a childhood of want with its tears. You who always preserved your heart's poverty, girl with the feet of the needy, accustomed to stones, whose mouth was not always acquainted with sweetmeat and bread. You come from the destitute South that once nurtured my soul. In her heaven, your mother goes on with her washing clothes with my mother. Therefore, I have singled you out to be my companion. Of the symbols that fill Neruda's pages, those of the sea are most persuasive. Each figurehead in Neruda's house has its own story, told in Neruda's careful English.
In that one, I fell in love with, it is a funny thing, I saw her through a keyhole. They told me that in a certain house, you could see through a keyhole a figure. And then I went and I looked at it. The house was closed. But I came every day to look through the keyhole. And then later on, slowly, I made love to her, and she's here. The first was sent to me by the seamen of Punta Arenas in the Magellan Strait. She's called Sirena because the boat was called Sirena. It was an English boat which sunk in the Magellan Strait. You see the sea around the Magellan Straits is famous for storms. And many ships have sunk there. And the old clippers have these figureheads. The fastest ships of the sailing time, the clipper epoch, came to Chile and left. And many sank here. The large one is also from the south of Chile. And I had it outside the house for a long time. But some people thought that it was a statue of Gabriela Mistral. And some others thought that it was a Catholic Virgin image. And once we went, our wife and myself, and they had lighted candles, and they were kneeling down, some old ladies, praying before her. I told them, why do you pray? Is she not a saint? I said, no, she's a sinner.
Isla Negra seems a world apart from the problems of urban mankind, but Neruda is never left alone for long, nor does he wish to be. Invitations seek him out. His talks reaffirm the views expressed by his manifesto toward an impure poetry. It is well, at certain hours of the day and night, to look closely at the world of objects at rest. Wheels that have crossed long, dusty distances with their mineral and vegetable burdens. Sacks from the coal bins, barrels and baskets, handles and hafts for the carpenter's tool chest. From them flow the contacts of man with the earth, like a text for all harassed lyricists. The used surfaces of things, the wear that the hands give to things, the air, tragic at times, pathetic at others, of such things, all lend a curious attractiveness to the reality of the world that should not be underprized. In them one sees the confused impurity of the human condition, the massing of things, the use and disuse of substances, footprints and fingerprints, the abiding presence of the human engulfing all artifacts inside and out. Let that be the poetry we search for, worn with the hand's obligations, as by acids, steeped in sweat and in smoke, smelling of lilies and urine, spattered diversely by the trades that we live by, inside the law or beyond it. A poetry impure as the clothing we wear, or our bodies, soup-stained, soiled with our shameful behavior, our wrinkles and vigils and dreams, observations and prophecies, declarations of loathing and love, idols and beasts, the shocks of encounter, political loyalties, denials and doubts, affirmations and taxes. Those who shun the bad taste of things will fall on their face in the snow. Neruda's poetry speaks not only for Chile, but for a continent whose future is linked to its historic past in his epic poem about an Inca fortress in the Peruvian Andes, the heights of Machu Picchu.
Entonces en la escala de la tierra he subido entre la atroz maraña de las selvas perdidas hasta ti, Machu Picchu.
Then up the ladder of the earth I climbed through the barbed jungle thickets until I reached you, Machu Picchu. Tall city of stepped stone, home at long last of whatever earth had never hidden in her sleeping clothes. In you, two lineages that had run parallel met where the cradle both of man and light rocked in a wind of thorns. Mother of stone and sperm of condors, high reef of the human dawn, spade buried in primordial sand. This was the habitation, this is the site. Here the fat grains of maize grew high to fall again like red hail. The fleece of the vicuña was carded here to clothe men's loves in gold, their tombs and mothers, the king, the prayers, the warriors. Up here, men's feet found rest at night near eagles' talons in the high meat-stuffed eyries. And in the dawn, with thunder steps, they trod the thinning mists, touching the earth and stones, that they might recognize that touch, come night, come death. I gaze at clothes and hands, traces of water in the booming cistern, a wall burnished by the touch of a face that witnessed with my eyes the earth's carpet of tapers, oiled with my hands the vanished wood. For everything, apparel, skin, pots, words, wine, loaves, has disappeared, fallen to earth. For Neruda, Machu Picchu is an enduring monument to man's brotherhood in common purpose. His poetry seeks to rekindle that promise while it examines the eternal enigmas of creation. Answers to the riddle of human life evade Pablo Neruda, as they do all men. But for Neruda, the wind, salt, and cold of the Chilean seacoast are answer enough when he is with the woman he loves. He calls these walks solitudes.
Entre las piedras de la costa, andando por la orilla de Chile.
Walking a sea coast of stones on the beaches of Chile, moving ever more distantly, ocean, by moon and sargasso, on the lonely expanse of a planet. A seacoast dismembered by thunder and gnawed by the tooth of each changing dawn, worn by massive displacements of time and the waves. Birds circle slowly, their feathers colored like iron, and one knows a world finishes here. No one will say so, for none can survive in this place. It is not written down, neither numbers nor letters exist, and no one sets foot on the shadowy sand under its pollen of lead. Only desolate flowers take root here, plants whose behavior is seen in the bramble, an outburst of flowers in a fury of petals. No one has said, this is land's end. Here the world's vacancy begins. The old ministering void that instructs through disaster with shadows and shadows and shadows and shadows. This is the coastland opening out from the south and the west to the north to the solitudes. A solitude exceeding all number, swept by wind, salt, and cold, by chains and the moon and the sea swell. Yet the stars that splinter themselves toothlessly here must be counted. I must gather up fragments of stone, talking with no one to listen, talking to nobody, being and not being in a single pulsation. I am that sentryman on an outpost where all the defenders have fled in a vast desolation of stone. In his 60s, Pablo Neruda remains faithful to the poet's calling. He says, I have built what I could out of natural stone, like a native. Open-handed, I have worked with my reason, unreason, my caprices, my fury, my poise. I say, Pablo is back again, stripping myself down in the light and dropping my hands in the sea until all is transparent again there under the earth, and my sleep can be tranquil.